Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are floating somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, under a sky that is so full of stars it almost hurts to look at. It's quiet, except for the gentle lapping of water against a wooden canoe, the kind that's been slicing through these waters for over 1,000 years. There's no engine, no GPS, and definitely no Starbucks cup holders. Just a deep, salty silence and an even deeper sense of wonder. You're lying flat on your back neck, stiff eyes wide, trying to memorize a sky full of ancient wisdom. Thousands of pinpricks of light above you, every one of them more important than your phone's weather app. There are no maps, no compasses, just your memory and the stars. And maybe, hopefully, your very good guess. And yes, spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this voyage. Because unless you've trained your whole life to feel waves with your toes and remember hundreds of star paths without blinking, you're just another modern land creature pretending to be Moana. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get down to business tonight. I'm dragging my feet across the beach, barely awake, but someone hands me a paddle and says, "You're late." The canoe waits in the shallows like a silent teacher. I climb in, sit down on a woven mat, and immediately realize there's no plan, no seats, no safety briefing. Just an elder nodding at me to look up. So I do. The stars aren't just stars anymore. They are names, places, entire directions. They rise and set in predictable places, unlike my motivation on a Monday. And here's the kicker. Every person on this canoe knows which stars mark which directions, what time they rise, where they set, and what islands they point to, all from memory. I try to spot Orion's belt, at least that's familiar. But here, it's not Orion. It's Ka-Hehe Ona Keiki, the line of children. The cultural stories embedded in each constellation change everything. I'm not looking at the night sky anymore. I'm looking at a map, a cultural story, a user interface. It's one of the most brilliant memory systems in human history, and we almost lost it. Not to war or fire or aliens, but to forgetfulness. Because once the Western compasses and sextants came in, people stopped relying on memory. You know how you used to remember all your friends' phone numbers and now can't even recall your own. Yeah, same vibe. Historians still debate whether Polynesian navigation was the result of organized migration or sheer accident, like a lot of history's greatest hits. Some say the navigators deliberately explored the ocean, tracking currents, bird paths, and stars. Others say, well, they just got really lost and happened to stumble into paradise, which, if true, is the luckiest wrong turn in human history. But I'm betting on skill, because as I stare at the sky, I start to notice patterns. The same stars appear at the same angles every night. The moon rises and falls like a sleepy dance partner. And the ocean never shuts up. Its rhythms, its whispers, even its tantrums, everything speaks if you're willing to listen. One of the older voyagers leans toward me and says, "The sky never lies, but your brain does. So be careful who you trust more." Great. My brain is now officially my least reliable crew member. We drift on into the darkness, the canoe slicing silently through the water. No one's talking, but no one's really asleep either. Everyone is watching, listening, feeling. And I realize this isn't just a journey. It's a test, a ritual, a lullaby that floats on ocean breath and starlight. In the distance, a sudden splash breaks the rhythm. Someone laughs, probably a flying fish, or a shark auditioning for a Disney reboot. Doesn't matter. We're alone with the sky, and the sky's got a lot to say tonight. I stretch out, trying not to snore. The stars above me look the same as they did an hour ago, but apparently they've moved 3 degrees west, which everyone else noticed but me. I fake a confident nod. Just go with it. Suddenly someone points. Hoku'ula, they whisper. I squint. That's Aldebaran, apparently. It rises at a very specific angle, and time used to navigate toward Tahiti. That one glowing red point might as well be a lighthouse in space. I try to memorize its position. Fail. Try again. Fail less. You know that moment when you realize you're dumber than a 10-year-old native kid from the 13th century humbling. Especially since that kid would already be steering the canoe by now. The night deepens. The sky rotates slowly, and I feel something shift, not in the stars, but in me. My city brain is too slow for this. My instincts are rusty. My memory is cluttered with song lyrics and snack schedules. But somehow, the rhythm of this canoe, the pulse of the waves, the yawning stretch of the stars, it begins to settle something inside me. We're not racing. We're drifting with direction, floating forward in slow motion. And all we have to guide us is what's above and what's within. I close my eyes just for a second, try to hear the sky breathe, and I start to understand. This isn't just navigation, it's devotion. The sun rises like it has something to prove. It paints the ocean gold and turns the clouds into pink whispers. I'm blinking against the light, still groggy from a night of pretending I wasn't confused the whole time. My back hurts. My neck feels like I used it to steer. But everyone else? They look fresh, calm, like they've just come from a spa, instead of 12 hours of celestial cramming. We glide toward an invisible horizon. No land in sight, no birds, just the open mouth of the Pacific and this impossibly graceful canoe. And on board are people who seem born into this. The youngest on the crew is maybe 12. He's barefoot, balancing on the rail like a cat, eyes squinting toward the east. Someone shouts his name, and he calls back the name of a star. Not in English, not even in Hawaiian, but in the ancient voyaging dialect, which, let's be honest, sounds cooler than anything Siri's ever said. These kids, they don't memorize charts. They become them. I'm trying to get a grip on how this works. There's no school for it, not the way we think of school. No desks, no notebooks, no study guides. Learning to be a wayfinder starts when you're still small enough to think fish guts are cool. They say the canoe is the classroom. The ocean is the syllabus. And your elders, your walking encyclopedias. If you don't learn, it's not just a bad grade, it's death. The stakes are literally ocean deep. Every lesson is hands-on, or more like feet-on. One of the elder navigators tells me to take off my shoes. I do. Then he tells me to close my eyes and just feel. I try. Salt wind rushes past my ears. The canoe rocks, and beneath my bare feet, the faintest rolling pressure, gentle, then sharp, then gentle again. Feel that, he says. That's the swell from the northeast. But there's another one underneath. That's from the south. Learn the layers. I nod, even though the only layers I'm feeling are confusion and foot cramps. Polynesian children are trained from the time they can walk to recognize the different wave patterns. One kid I meet explains it like he's talking about different TikTok dances. This one's from the trade winds. This one's from a storm 3 days ago. And this one, probably Tahiti sneezing. I laugh. He doesn't. He's serious. And it's not just wave science. It's cultural transmission. These kids are absorbing an entire worldview that we, with all our gadgets and calendars and weather apps, can't replicate. It's muscle memory passed down from brain to body to soul. Historians still debate whether this kind of environmental literacy qualifies as science in the Western academic sense. Some scholars argue it's intuitive rather than empirical. Others insist it's just a different form of empiricism learned through repetition trust and a very real risk of capsizing. Personally, I think it's smarter than most things I learned in algebra. There's a ceremony for everything. Before a journey, children watch their elders chant to the stars. Not at the stars, but with them. As if the sky is part of the family and needs to be reminded, hey, we're still paying attention. One odd fact I learned, some navigators believe each star has its own personality. Like seriously, they talk about Sirius as hot-headed Antares, as distant and Canopus trustworthy. Which is wild, because that's exactly how I feel about my exes. Anyway, I'm watching a group of kids sketch the stars into the sand with their fingers. No paper, no tech, just sand and memory, and they're fast. They draw arcs angles, rising points, setting points. One girl maps out a week's worth of sky movements with nothing but a stick and some seaweed. I ask her how she remembers it all. She shrugs. I don't remember. I live it, and there it is. That's the secret. You can't learn this passively. You have to live it. You can't cram. You can't highlight your notes the night before the voyage. You can't Google your way through a storm. The ocean has no pause button. Later in the day, we anchor near a reef. It's a training ground. No tourist boats here. Just young navigators diving into the coral shallows laughing, splashing, testing their senses. One elder throws a pebble and challenges them to find it with their eyes closed, using current sound and instinct. I try it. Let's just say the pebble is still out there. The training is constant. Even play becomes practice. A game of who can stand longest on one foot while reading the sky ends with someone in the water and everyone else giggling. But the lesson sticks. That night, I'm on my back again, staring at the stars. They look a little more familiar now. Not completely, but enough. Enough to feel like maybe I belong here. A little. A shooting star rips across the sky. One of the younger navigators gasps and yells, "That's not on the compass." We all laugh. I'm starting to get it. This world, this ancient world is still here. You just have to let go of everything you think you know and let it teach you. The sky, the sea, the stars, they're not hiding, they're waiting. The canoe rocks gently as we leave the reef behind, sails billowing with lazy confidence, like it knows where it's going even if I don't. The wood creaks in rhythm, a kind of sleepy heartbeat, and I've officially lost all concept of direction. North-south. I think I left those ideas somewhere back with my phone charger. Someone hands me a coconut, not for drinking, for sitting, which feels very on brand for this experience. I plop down, trying to look like I belong. Spoiler, I don't. The elder, who's been keeping a suspiciously close eye on me, finally speaks. The canoe is your classroom now. Pay attention. And just like that, class is in session. There are no chairs, no blackboard. Instead, there's the rhythmic creak of the outrigger, the flutter of sails above, and the ocean stretching out in every direction like the world's most intimidating exam. Our textbook, the sky. Our pencils, our own fading memory. One of the kids starts pointing things out like a museum guide on fast forward. That's Ke Ali'i Okona I Ka Loa, the chief of the southern sky. That's Hikianalia. That one leads you to Rapa Nui. That one tells you when to eat breadfruit. I nod sagely while internally panicking. I didn't even know breadfruit had a schedule. Apparently, everything is linked. Navigation food, seasons ceremony. The canoe doesn't just take you across the ocean. It takes you across time. And every ripple of water, every whisper of wind, becomes a line in a curriculum older than any university. We're shown how to read the hull, not with our eyes, with our balance. If the swell's coming from starboard, the canoe tilts just enough. The wayfinders know what angle means, what force and which force means which island. Me, I lean too hard and almost fall into someone's lap. Great start. A young navigator points out that the sails are also part of the teaching system. How they're angled affects not just speed, but how the stars line up with the bow. You can't memorize the sky, he tells me. You have to memorize where you are under it. That one hits different. Historians still debate whether Polynesian voyagers had set curricula passed down by oral chants, or if each community had its own methods. Some argue there were standardized patterns of instruction across island chains. Others believe the knowledge was more decentralized, tailored to the specific conditions of each region and its resources. I suspect both are true. The ocean doesn't allow for rigid systems. It forces you to adapt or disappear. And speaking of disappearing, have you ever tried to keep your balance on a moving canoe while looking at a star and trying not to puke from motion sickness? It's like being in a spinning planetarium on a roller coaster while taking a pop quiz on astronomy. At one point, the instructor has us close our eyes and try to hear the direction. I scoff internally. But then, I do hear something. Not sound exactly, more like a feeling of shift. The bow nudges slightly left. The wind hits my cheek differently. The sail tugs. They all notice it too. Without words, everyone adjusts. I blink. Are they psychic? Is this a group hallucination? Nope. Just centuries of practice in human awareness that I, with all my notifications and calendar alerts, have absolutely not cultivated. Then comes the teaching. I dread the stars. I'm handed a stick. Draw the horizon, someone says. I carve a shaky semicircle into the wood of the canoe's deck. Now mark east and west. I freeze. Is the sun still up? Can I cheat too late? A knowing smile tells me they've already clocked my ignorance. Another student, maybe 15, takes over. With one finger, she marks the rising points of stars I haven't even noticed. She doesn't look up. She knows. Then comes the odd fact of the day. In some traditions, the teaching isn't done during the day at all. It's done in dreams. Elders claim that once you learn to see the stars while awake, you begin to see them while asleep. That's when you know you're ready. When the ocean speaks in your dreams. And suddenly, I get why I'm so exhausted all the time. My dreams are still full of emails. Later, someone tosses a coconut into the sea and challenges me to steer the canoe to it using only the angle of the sail and the stars. I laugh. They're serious. Go on. The classroom doesn't stop. I fail. Spectacularly. We end up 30 yards away, and a kid has to swim for it. He comes back soaked and smirking. Maybe try algebra next time. Everyone laughs, including me. Because this isn't school in the way I remember it, where you dread mistakes. This is school where failure is feedback and embarrassment is expected. Where lessons come with splashes and salt and gentle sarcasm. One of the older navigators stands at the front of the canoe and chants something low and rhythmic. The stars overhead seem to pulse in response. I don't understand the words, but I feel the meaning. The canoe shifts again, slightly. The classroom is always moving, always adjusting. Just like the mind that must learn from it. And as we sail through the night, I realize I've already started learning. Not in the way I hoped, like a checklist, but in the way you memorize a song without trying. It sticks quietly in the background. The canoe doesn't just take you places, it teaches you how to arrive. By now, I've stopped asking where we are. The question feels almost rude, like asking a fish if it knows it's wet. We're somewhere, and the stars know, even if I don't. I'm starting to realize that part of the magic here is trusting the answer is out there, even if you can't see it on a map or fit it into your GPS-friendly brain. We're sailing at night again, of course. The stars are back in full glory, looking smug as ever. Up above, they shine with that crisp, distant coolness, like they've been doing this long before we got here, and will keep doing it long after we're gone. And no offense to weather satellites, but there's just something deeply soothing about being guided by light that's a few hundred light years old. Tonight, I learned the difference between fixed stars and planets, the wandering stars. It's like the universe has its own set of loyal employees and a handful of flaky freelancers. The fixed stars move in a predictable path, always rising and setting in the same direction throughout the year. These are the ones navigators trust. The planet's gorgeous, but unreliable. A little like your friend, who always promises to help you move, and then gets sick on moving day. One of the crew members, a soft-spoken man who's probably forgotten more about the night sky than I've ever learned, starts pointing to the eastern horizon. "Watch that one," he says, nodding toward a bright twinkle. "That's Hokulea. She rises in the same place every time. You can follow her for weeks." He tells me that ancient navigators memorized dozens of these rising points, like city bus stops. The sky becomes a giant timetable, and if you know the schedule, you can ride your way across an entire ocean. Historians still debate whether the Polynesians could identify constellations with the same consistency across thousands of miles. Some think local variations and regional names made the system too fractured to function globally. But I'm watching this man recite star names like they're family members, and I'm not buying the inconsistency argument. I'm handed a woven mat and told to lie down. Look straight up. Don't blink. Wait. The sky slowly tilts as the canoe rocks beneath me, and I can feel the earth spinning not in a nauseating way, but in a meant-to-be this way kind of way. The stars move in slow arcs, and even though I know it's the earth rotating, not the stars moving, the effect is hypnotic. We use the horizon to track the rising and setting of the stars. Each one rises at a precise point and sets opposite it. It's called the sidereal compass, and it doesn't care what Google Maps says. This is old school, celestial, prehistoric even, and yet somehow also postmodern cool. If Elon Musk had any style, he'd be doing this. Here's a fun, odd fact. Some navigators use their outstretched hand thumb to pinky to measure the arc between stars and the horizon. Each handspan equals roughly 20 degrees of sky. I try it. My hand shakes a little. My angle's probably wrong. But suddenly, I feel like I'm holding the galaxy between my fingers. It's a little terrifying. Also kind of awesome. Don't trust one star, someone says. Use 3. Always 3. It's a rule of thumb in a wayfinding triangulate your direction by using at least 3 fixed points in the sky. That way, if one is blocked by clouds or lost to sleep-deprived eyeballs, you're not completely toast. I ask what happens when the sky is cloudy. A boy barely out of high school shrugs. You use the waves, the birds, the smell of the sea. He pauses. Or you wait. That last one hits me hard. Or you wait. Sometimes, navigation means knowing when not to move. That's a lesson most of us landlubbers could use. Just because you can keep going doesn't mean you should. At this point, my brain is overheating. It's like trying to memorize the layout of an airport terminal while the airport is spinning and you're not wearing shoes. But no one else seems stressed. They stretch out under the stars like they're watching Netflix. Someone even starts humming a low, repetitive chant that I can't quite understand, but I feel it. The chant I learn is part of the memory system. It's how they remember the stars. The pattern of rising and setting points becomes a kind of song, looping over and over in their heads until it becomes reflex. Like remembering your childhood phone number or the lyrics to a boy band song you swore you'd never admit liking. The stars are sung. That's the phrase that sticks with me. They're not memorized, they're sung. And each star has a place in the chant. It's poetry. Navigation as lullaby. The ocean is your stage, and the sky is your script. Suddenly, someone yells, "Time to jibe." The crew scrambles ropes, tighten the sail, swings across with a whoosh. We've changed direction, and with that change, a whole new set of stars becomes our compass. It's like flipping to the next chapter in a book, except the book is infinite and written in fire. The stars behind us dip below the ocean, and new ones rise to take their place. I try to remember them. Just one. Any of them. But my eyes are heavy, and my mind is drifting. And somewhere out in the starlit silence, I start to feel like maybe, just maybe, I'm not as lost as I thought I was. I'm woken up by someone tapping my shoulder with the kind of urgency that suggests either a sea monster or a pop quiz. "You're missing the compass," they whisper. I sit up, groggy, neck-stiff, legs asleep, and glance around. No monster. Just the same dark ocean, and an unusually focused group of navigators crouched around the bow. There's no physical compass, no shiny needle pointing north. Instead, they've all turned their bodies into living instruments. One is pointing with his chin, another uses his extended arm. They look like statues of concentration. It's called the star compass, and unlike the compass in your drawer, this one you have to build entirely inside your own head. I scoot closer, trying not to look too clueless, though my face probably gives away the internal chaos. Imagine a circle, one of them says. Now, split it into 4, north, south, east, west, then into 8, then 16, now 32. He pauses. Each slice holds a star. I nod, like this makes sense. Internally, my brain is throwing papers in the air and quitting. The star compass, or ka lani ka'a, is one of the most elegant navigation tools ever conceived. Not a device, but a system of remembering. Each star has a specific rising and setting point along the horizon. When a star rises in the east and sets in the west, it becomes a directional marker. Multiply that by dozens of stars, and you have a full compass in your mind's eye. No buttons, no batteries, just memory. One odd fact: the ancient Polynesians didn't even draw it. They embodied it. A navigator would stand facing forward, arms slightly out, body aligned with the canoe, and imagine the 32 cardinal directions stretching around them in a circle. Each segment had a name. Each name had a star, and each star had a purpose. Historians still debate whether these direction points were universally agreed upon, or if each island group had their own version of the compass. Some say it was standardized across the Pacific. Others argue it was more flexible, adjusted, based on environmental clues and cultural context. Either way, the compass worked. And it worked, without needing to be plugged in. I try to build my own mental compass. It goes poorly. I remember 3-star names mix up east and west, and for a brief moment try to assign direction based on where I saw the moon rise yesterday. Spoiler, that's not how this works. Don't memorize it, someone advises. Feel it. Easy for them to say. We spend the afternoon rehearsing, not with flashcards, but by standing in place on the deck, watching the sun move and noting how shadows fall. I learn that even during the day, wayfinders track the direction by marking the arc of the sun and matching it with where specific stars would rise at night. It's like memorizing a duet with an invisible partner. Someone hands me a shell and tells me to use it to mark the house of law. That's the segment of the compass where the sun rises in the summer. It's also part of the chant we started learning last night. Each section of the compass is called a house, and each house hosts stars during their rise and set. By now, I'm humming that chant without even realizing it. It loops in my head like a catchy but deeply stressful lullaby. I've gotten stuck on a line about Altair for the last 2 hours. If I survive this trip, that star and I are going to have words. And here's something even cooler. These compass points don't exist physically, but the navigators see them as clearly as you see a street sign. One crew member tells me I can feel where Aina Kolau is east-northeast, even if I close my eyes. I test him. He points eyes shut. We check the actual position. Dead on. I try it. I point. I'm 90 degrees off. So close. As the sun begins to lower, we practice turning the canoe to face different houses of the compass. Everyone shifts positions like choreography. The hull creaks. The sail adjusts. The shadows move. And then the clouds clear. One by one, stars begin to wink into the sky. First the bright ones, then the shy ones. A few crew members start humming again. Others fall completely silent, mouths moving as they recite names. This is when it hits me. The star compass isn't just about directions. It's about identity. To know the stars is to know who you are, where you come from, and how to get back home. One of the elders finally speaks again. You don't memorize the stars. You remember the way they rise, the feeling of them, the story they tell when they move. That might be the most poetic piece of homework I've ever gotten. We fall into a rhythm, sailing slowly through the night bodies, aligned with the horizon stars rising in predictable beauty. The compass in my head is still wonky, but for a moment, just one small moment, I feel it snap into place. And it feels like the sky is no longer above me. It's around me. By now, I've given up pretending I can memorize anything the normal way. I've forgotten every mnemonic I learned in school, including, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally," which I now suspect was only slightly more useful than a broken sundial on a cloudy night. So when one of the younger crew members tells me, "You've got to sing it," I raise an eyebrow. But honestly, I'm desperate. Sing what I ask. The horizon, he says, as if that explains anything. Turns out, one of the most essential tools of Hawaiian wayfinding is a star chant, a long looping melody with the names of rising and setting stars placed in the order they appear across the celestial sphere. I don't get a lyric sheet or a backing track. No auto-tune either. Just a quiet voice next to me repeating the names over and over. We're sitting around the stern in a kind of informal star study group. No desks. Just saltwater slicked knees, calloused feet, and the occasional flying fish interrupting someone mid-verse. I fumble along as best I can, mumbling, stumbling, sometimes accidentally, making up fake stars that sound vaguely Hawaiian, but probably mean burnt coconut or grandmother's slipper. The chant is circular. It starts with stars in the east, traces them across the zenith, and ends with stars sinking into the west. Every house on the star compass has its own line, its own rhythm. When sung correctly, the chant becomes a living map. One odd fact: there's no single version of this chant. It varies depending on your home island, the season, even the specific voyage. Some chants include emotional metaphors, like the star that cries over lost lands. Others are blunt, like the one above the pig. Historians still debate whether these chants were strictly for navigation or also encoded other cultural memories, like genealogies, weather patterns, or even taboo zones at sea. The line between practical and spiritual knowledge here is blurred, like the horizon at dusk. I try inventing my own mnemonic for the eastern stars. Big angry tuna eats rice quietly. Not bad. But then someone points to a star and whispers its actual name: Hanaya Kamalama, the foster child of the moon. And I suddenly feel like a toddler trying to label the Mona Lisa with a sticky note. To make things worse, or maybe better, some of the stars don't even exist all the time. They're seasonal. Some only rise in winter, others disappear in summer. That means your memory has to shift like the ocean itself. You can't memorize a static sky. You have to memorize a moving one. One of the elders leads us in a slower version of the chant. He closes his eyes and sways. It's mesmerizing. The tone is soft, almost hypnotic. I start to hum along, not knowing the words, but catching the rhythm. It feels more like prayer than practice. Suddenly he stops, points to a dim star just rising. That one, he says, Makali'i, a cluster of stars, what we know as the Pleiades. When she returns to the eastern sky, that's when the new year begins. The chant isn't just for direction. It tells time. It marks holidays. It warns of storms. It reminds you that the sky is your calendar, your clock, your playlist, your alarm. And if you forget a line, you don't just lose your place. You lose your way. I realize I've been trying to memorize this information the same way I'd cram for finals. Repeat. Stress, repeat again. But the crew doesn't stress. They absorb. The chant lives in them the way we know the route home from work without thinking. At one point, a boy maybe 10 years old sings the chant while spinning in a circle. Why is he doing that? I ask. He's learning the directions with his body, someone answers, not just his mouth. That's when I understand the compass lives in their bones. We take a break. I sit near the edge of the canoe, watching the stars twinkle like distant candlelights. One star, especially bright, seems to hover just above the water. I ask someone what it's called. They say. Means to burn. I nod. A good name for something that's both beautiful and deadly if you follow it wrong. And here's another fun twist. Some navigators don't chant the stars in Hawaiian at all. They create their own words, sounds, even gestures, depending on their teaching lineage. It's less about language and more about association. The chant becomes personal, customized, like a cosmic playlist only your brain knows how to shuffle. That night, I lie in the center of the canoe humming. The rhythm of the boat matches the rhythm of the chant. The stars above glide like notes in a melody. I forget where I am. I forget what time it is, but I remember the chant. Not all of it, but pieces. Enough. It sticks, and for once I don't feel like I'm studying. I feel like I'm remembering something I was supposed to know all along. It's just past midnight when the teaching takes a sharp turn into the surreal. We're all gathered near the center of the canoe, bundled in woven cloaks, sipping something vaguely fishy but warm. Someone whispers, "Tonight we practice a talk." Everyone nods. I blink. What's a talk? The elder turns toward me slowly, Like this is the moment I either become part of the crew or get tossed overboard for asking too many dumb questions. A talk, he says, is how you move without moving. Excellent. We've officially entered the philosophical portion of this voyage. Turns out, a talk is one of the most sophisticated and least intuitive mental navigation systems ever devised. Instead of thinking about yourself moving across the ocean, you imagine reference islands, some real, some imaginary moving past you. You stay still. The island moves. Every few hours, a new one takes its place. I squint at the ocean and try to picture an imaginary island gliding gently by, like a ghost cruise ship. I fail. My brain refuses. It's like trying to dream with your eyes open. One of the younger navigators draws a line in the air. Pretend that reef over there is Island 1. Behind it, Island 2. Beyond that, Island 3. Now forget the reef. The ocean is flat. And you're still. The world moves. It's not just poetic. It's functional. The ETAC system lets navigators mentally track distance by marking the passage of these reference points. Every time an ETAC, real or imagined, crosses a specific star line on the horizon, you log the distance. It's like counting mile markers on a highway that only exists in your head. Here's the odd part. Some attack points are based on stars, others on swells, others on cloud formations, some on nothing. Just a story passed down by an ancestor. My great uncle used to say there was an island shaped like a turtle out there. So that's my ETAC. And boom, just like that, the turtle island becomes a part of your mental map. Historians still debate whether the ETAC system originated in Micronesia or Polynesia, and whether it was used consistently across all voyaging cultures. Some believe it's more metaphor than method. Others insist it was a rigorously structured tracking tool. I'm just here trying to figure out how to not get lost, and honestly, I'll take whatever works. Someone hands me a small stone. This is your island, they say. I nod solemnly, like I'm not totally baffled. I stare at the stone. It's smooth, warm from someone's hand. I close my eyes, try to picture it floating beside us, keeping pace. For a moment, I think I get it. Then a wave hits, and I drop the stone. It rolls into the shadows. So much for Island Rock. The crew doesn't laugh. They nod like, yeah, we've all lost a rock island or two. We continue the practice. The ETAC points shift with every star that rises. There's a rhythm to it. One point moves, another takes its place. You keep track by counting transitions like a mental baton pass. One navigator clicks his tongue each time we pass a point. Another taps her foot. No one uses a pen or paper. Just habit. Repetition. Faith. Here's something wild. Some navigators could track more than 100 ETAC points on a single journey. That's 100 imaginary islands, each with its own distance, direction, and meaning. I have trouble tracking where I left my sandals. The exercise continues. We all stare at the horizon. One of the kids whispers, "There, ETAC 4. I ask what they see. Nothing, they say. But I know it's there, and somehow I believe them. Later that night, I try it alone. I pick a faint star, rising in the northeast, and imagine a small island just beneath it. I name it Pillow Island, because I'm exhausted, and that sounds cozy. As we sail, I track the star's arc. When it reaches its midpoint, I mentally swap it for another blanket atoll. Not historically accurate, but I'm new here. Something shifts. I begin to feel the motion of these phantom islands. They're no longer abstract. They have texture, weight, like friends you never meet in person, but still trust implicitly. This is what ETAC does. It turns the invisible into something you can hold. It makes the ocean less empty more knowable, less terrifying, more like home. And once you accept the weirdness of it, it starts to make a strange kind of sense. Your mind doesn't fight it anymore. It starts playing along. The stars above the waves, beneath the memory between everything, begins to sink. And that's when I realize, maybe I've been thinking about navigation all wrong. It's not about moving through space. It's about letting space move through you. It's early morning, and everything is gray. The ocean, the sky, my mood. I'm lying flat on my back again, which by now is my permanent canoe posture, trying to make sense of the horizon that seems to be swallowing us whole. No stars, no sun, just endless mist, and a vague sense of we're somewhere. That's when the real lesson begins. The elder leans down and says, "No stars today. You ready?" I open one eye. Ready for what? He taps the canoe with his knuckles. You're going to feel it in your bones. Wonderful. We've moved from celestial geometry to Jedi training. With the stars gone, everything depends on the swell, those long rolling waves that reach across entire oceans. There's more than one kind of course, because nothing on this trip is ever easy. The trick is to sense the direction, speed, and timing of each swell as it hits the canoe, without charts, without compasses, just pure sensation. It's like trying to solve calculus by lying on a yoga mat in a moving elevator. I close my eyes, barefoot, palms down. The canoe lifts, then drops, lifts again. But it's not just one movement, it's layered. A slow, wide swell pushes from the southeast. A shorter, sharper one tugs from the north. And beneath both, something deeper, older. Like a drumbeat you feel before you hear. Different storms, someone murmurs. Different places, all sending their voices to us. That poetic statement might have made me cry if I wasn't busy trying not to puke. One odd fact, experienced wayfinders can tell the direction of an island they can't yet see just by noticing how the waves bounce back after hitting land. These subtle, rebounding ripples are invisible to the eye, but not to the skin. Not if you've spent years training for it, not if your body is your compass. Historians still debate whether this ability is purely sensory or if it's also partly learned intuition, pattern, recognition formed over thousands of miles. Either way, it's not magic, it's attention, and I have none of it. We practice all day. The stars are still hidden, no birds, no clouds, just wave after wave, and me sitting cross-legged, trying to feel the ocean's gossip. I get better slowly. At first, all swells feel the same, wet, annoying, unpredictable. But then I notice something, a slight shift in the roll when we turn the canoe. It's subtle, like the difference between riding a bike with flat tires versus one that just feels right. That's the moment the swell clicks. Then someone adds a new layer of difficulty. Now, walk across the canoe. Eyes closed. I freeze. What you need to feel. Which side dips first? That's the direction of the dominant swell. I give it a shot. I stand up, wobble like a tourist on a tightrope, and start shuffling forward. My feet grip the mat. The boat rocks gently. Left side dips slightly, then the right. I pause. Try to remember what that means. Left dip, swell, from port, a swell from northwest. I open my eyes. Everyone's staring. I point with one shaky hand. That way, they nod. I've never felt more proud of pointing in my life. By afternoon, the sky clears just enough for one faint star to peek through. The crew erupts in quiet excitement. Kane Holani, someone shouts, the sun god, the presence of clarity, and just like that everything realigns. But here's the wild part. No one needed the star. They'd already tracked our course by waves alone. The star just confirmed what their bodies already knew. We drop anchor near a shallow reef. Everyone takes turns diving off the side, cooling off, shaking off the training. I follow, plunging into the shock of salt and silence. Underwater, I realize something. The same waves I'd been trying to feel above now surround me completely. They're not just motion, they're structure. Walls of force lines of rhythm, like underwater architecture. I surface, gasping eyes wide, ears ringing. I get it now. The swell isn't something on the surface. It's the whole ocean speaking at once. That night, lying in the canoe again, I feel different. Not smarter, just softer, more open. There's a saying I overheard today. The ocean never lies, but it doesn't repeat itself either. It's true. Every moment is a new version of the same test, and the only way to pass is to listen harder than you've ever listened in your life. The stars are back out now, clear and calm, but I keep my eyes closed, just for a little while longer. I want to see what the waves have to say tonight. The sun cracks over the horizon, like a fried egg in a cast iron pan steaming up the surface of the sea. We've been drifting for days now, or maybe weeks. Time's kind of stretchy out here, and suddenly I notice something that stops me mid-stretch. Birds. Not just one or two, but a whole gang of them. Flying low, skimming the waves, changing direction in bursts. Everyone else notices too, but no one seems surprised. That's when I learn the birds are part of the map. The Iwa bird. Someone points. It doesn't sleep on the water, flies out at dawn, returns at dusk. A flying compass, basically. Another crew member adds, if they're headed away from you in the morning, follow. If they're coming back at night, follow them home. Okay, now we're tracking the commute schedules of seabirds. Good to know. This is where things get freaky again, in the best way. We're not just reading the sky anymore. We're reading everything. The water's color, the shape of the clouds, the smell of the wind. Yes, apparently the wind has a smell. One of the older navigators tells me, you'll know you're close to land when the sea smells sweeter. The trees exhale. I laugh. He doesn't. He's dead serious. And then it happens. Midday. Someone points to the water and says, look, it's subtle. The color changes. Less deep blue, more turquoise green. The seabed must be rising. That means land's not far, even if we still can't see it. I lean over the side. The waves seem gentler here, like they're being slowed by something beneath them. It's not visible, but it's there. An island's breath under the ocean's surface. One odd fact, in ancient times, navigators could recognize underwater structures like coral atolls and submerged volcanoes just by observing the way the clouds formed above them. Puffy vertical clouds often indicate warm land masses below. The land speaks through the sky, someone mutters. It sounds mystical, but here it's just practical. Historians still debate how much of this knowledge was intuitive versus taught. Some say it was all empirical, passed down through precise training. Others believe it also involved a kind of ancestral guidance, an inherited instinct sharpened by time. The truth probably lives somewhere in the middle, like most things out here. Now, the clouds. They're not just pretty backdrops or dramatic Instagram filters. They're signposts. The tall, towering ones often form over islands. The low, flat ones hang above cold water currents. Even the movement of clouds can reveal wind directions at different altitudes. I squint at one particularly dramatic cloud tower. It looks like a mushroom, or maybe a soft-serve cone. I'm hungry, but more importantly, it's directly west, which happens to be where we're headed. Good omen, says someone next to me. Island's not far now. Suddenly, We're surrounded by signs I wouldn't have noticed a week ago. Bits of drifting vegetation, a coconut, a small branch with leaves. These aren't just floating junk, they're messages. The ocean is whispering you're close. That night, I try my luck again. Lying on the mat, eyes half closed, I scan for birds against the fading sky. A flash of wings, a call. The Iwewa, the sooty tern. It circles in wide loops, then makes a beeline for the horizon. I nudge the crew. No one speaks, but there's a silent confirmation we follow the bird. We change course slightly. The sail adjusts. The stars remain our guide, but now we're adding layers. Each bird, each cloud, each flicker of water reflects more than just nature. It reflects location. Here's the weird part. I start recognizing patterns I didn't know I'd learned. A cloud moves a certain way, and I instinctively think northwest. A bird turns, and I feel us getting closer to land. It's as if the ocean has been speaking this whole time. And I'm finally starting to hear the accent. One of the elders pulls me aside later. You'll never remember everything he says, but you'll remember what mattered. I ask, how do you know what matters? He smiles. The ocean will tell you, if you're quiet enough. That night, we drift silently. The sky is clear, the moon is low, and the wind carries the scent of something I can't quite name, like fruit and fire and home. I can't see land yet, but I know it's there, and that's enough. The stars are out again, sharp as glass and just as silent. And I'm sitting cross-legged with a coconut in my lap, pretending it's a high-tech navigational instrument. One of the crew walks by and raises an eyebrow. I shrug. I'm calculating our location. He snorts. Try using your brain, not your fruit. That's fair. Tonight's lesson is something they call dead reckoning, which sounds appropriately ominous. No stars, no birds, no Etak. Just you, your memory, and the invisible trail of where you've been. It's the old school version of pressing back on a GPS, except without the map, the screen, or the recalculating lady. To dead reckon, you keep track of your direction speed and time traveled. If you know how fast you are going and in what direction, you can figure out approximately where you are, at least until your brain melts. Someone hands me a piece of driftwood. Your log. Toss it overboard. Count how long it takes to pass the canoe. I throw it. 1,000, 2, 1,000. By 6, 1,000, the log's drifting behind us. 6 seconds. We're doing about 1 canoe length every 3 seconds, which is apparently about 2 knots. Maybe. I don't ask questions. I just nod like I know what a knot feels like. One odd fact I learned, some navigators would tie knots into a cord every hour based on estimated speed. 1 knot for 1 hour of sailing at a given pace, hence the term knots for speed. Suddenly, nautical math makes slightly more sense. Historians still debate whether this method of navigation was purely intuitive, or if it involved structured intervals like how Western sailors used hourglasses. Some argue Polynesians used chants as timers. Others believe they relied entirely on bodily rhythm breathing, heartbeats paddling cadence. Either way it worked. Unless, of course, you lost track. Then, good luck. I give it a try. I mentally note our heading west by southwest. Estimate the speed. Count in my head. Time passes weirdly out here. Minutes stretch. Hours vanish. I try to track it with my heartbeat. That turns into anxiety. So I stop and hum the star chant instead. Surprisingly effective. By late morning, we've covered roughly 30 miles. Or maybe 300. I don't know. My coconut navigator hasn't said anything useful, but the crew has been tracking it without paper, without tech, just by watching the sea slip past one gentle whisper at a time. Someone tells me the story of a navigator who could keep an entire 3-week voyage in his head Every shift in wind, every swell, every Etak Island passed. No charts, just pure memory, like a mental GPS with no screen and no battery drain. Don't think of it as numbers they tell me. Think of it as story. You left from the island of red cliffs. You passed the whale feeding ground. You crossed the green water. You're now entering the breath of the shark god. Okay, now we're talking my language. Each leg of the journey becomes part of a living narrative. It's not we went west for 60 miles. It's we chased the long wave past the broken star until the reef scent reached our noses. That's a memory you can feel, not just record. We practice again. I close my eyes. Try to recall. What direction were we heading at sunrise? How did the wind shift mid-morning? Did we pass any birds? Was there a new swell? It's like trying to remember the plot of a dream from 2 nights ago, but I get some of it right. Enough to piece together a rough sense of distance. Enough to point shakily in the direction of where we started. The elder nods. You're beginning to track the trail behind you. That's the beginning of wayfinding. That night, I lie awake, the stars spinning above me, and I try to hold the day in my mind, like a trail of invisible footsteps across water. It's fragile, but it's there. And for the first time, I think I could find my way back. The canoe glides forward under a velvet sky, and I'm sitting cross-legged again, but this time not with a coconut, this time with nothing but a head full of clutter. The stars above are crisp and familiar now, like old friends who don't mind if you forget their names once in a while. Tonight, we begin building what they call the Memory Palace of the Pacific. Sounds fancy, right? Like something out of a BBC documentary with slow pans and echoing voiceovers. But here, it's far more humble. It's a place you build inside your head with nothing but repetition and imagination. And the first rule, you build it exactly the way the islands are laid out, not in kilometers or nautical miles, but in stories, stars, and sensations. Start with your home island, someone tells me. Picture it, smell it, hear it, then go west. What's the next island? I pause. I don't have an island. I have a parking garage and a poorly watered plant. Still, I try. I picture a place, red cliffs, white sand, a hollow wind like a flute. Then I imagine the ocean between dotted with invisible stepping stones. Each island becomes a mental shelf, and on each shelf I place a group of stars, a wave pattern, a bird type, a memory of a chant. One odd fact I learn. In some traditions, the memory palace isn't just a list of places, it includes emotions. Navigators were trained to associate each location with a feeling. That island makes me feel hungry. That one reminds me of my brother. Strange, sure, but effective. The more senses you attach to a memory, the easier it is to recall. It's neuroscience by way of storytelling. Some navigators describe it like a song line, others like a prayer path. One young crew member calls it a playlist with islands instead of songs. I like that. Historians still debate how literal these mental maps were. Some believe they were symbolic, more spiritual than spatial. Others argue they were astoundingly accurate, capable of guiding canoes thousands of miles with only minor error. The truth. I think they were both because accuracy doesn't always have to look like precision. Sometimes accuracy looks like trust. We sit under the stars, murmuring our islands to each other like bedtime rhymes. After the island of black sand comes the island of whispering palms, then the one with the long reef. Each island cues the next constellation. Each constellation cues the next wave. Each wave cues a memory of when you saw a certain bird and heard a certain chant. I try to build my own chain. Island of the big coconut, then island of the smelly bird, then island of mosquito regret, Hey, it's my palace. I can decorate it however I want. But something starts to happen. The more I repeat these images, the more real they feel. Like I've been to them. Like I could steer toward them if I had to. I add in imaginary smells, tastes, little flashes of feeling. The breeze, I imagine, on one island is cooler than the others. Another island makes me feel homesick. Another one feels like I just fell in love. It's wildly inefficient and strangely beautiful. We practice moving through our palaces. Someone calls out a starting point. Go from the island of banana leaves to the island of falling stars. What constellations do you see on the way? I panic. Then murmur Nahiku first, then the shark star, then the three twins. Everyone nods. I exhale. The elder smiles. See, you're building it. You just don't know it yet. And then he points to a part of the sky, just above the horizon. That's where your palace lives. Not in the stars. Between them, I look. There's nothing there. Just dark sky, empty space. But now, I know it's not empty. Not anymore. Because once you build a memory palace in the Pacific, you carry it everywhere. It doesn't sit on a map or hide in a book. It lives in your body, in the way you tilt your head, in the way you hear a wave and remember which way home smells. That night, as I lie on the deck again, I walk through my palace. I open its doors, visit its rooms. One by one, my imaginary islands glow in the starlight, and suddenly, I know exactly where I am. There's a new kind of quiet on the canoe tonight. Not the usual sleepy silence, but something heavier. A hush with memory woven into it. I don't ask why at first. I'm too busy trying to make my head not throb from memorizing reef shapes and chant cycles. But eventually, someone says it low and soft. This part of the journey used to belong to the old ones. They mean the true wayfinders. The last generation who held all this knowledge in their heads before it was written down. Filmed, analyzed, digitized, and politely tucked away in university databases. These were the men and women, though fewer, who could cross 1,000 miles with nothing but their own senses and a chant in their chest. They were the memory holders. We're sailing over their ghost paths now. One of the elders sits near the bow, eyes closed, humming something I haven't heard before. It's slower than the star chant, more like a lullaby, a goodbye. I ask him what it means. It's for Mau, he says, the last master, Mau Piailug, a navigator from Satawal, Micronesia, often called the last traditional wayfinder. In the 1970s, when Hawaiians had almost lost their entire navigation culture, it was Mau who came to teach them again. He gave the knowledge back, not because he had to, but because he knew what would happen if he didn't. An odd fact about Mau, he was barely 5 feet tall, quiet, almost shy. But he carried a map of the ocean in his mind, so precise he could sail for weeks without seeing land and still arrive exactly where he intended. Historians still debate whether Mau's knowledge was unique or if there were still hidden masters on remote islands. Some say he was the final thread. Others believe a few still lingered in secret, quiet families, choosing silence over spectacle. Either way, Ma was the one who stepped forward, who shared. And tonight, we're sailing the same way he did. The crew becomes more solemn. Less teasing, less laughter. It's like everyone feels we're passing through something sacred, a kind of corridor in time. One of the younger navigators tells me, when we pass this way, we always remember him. We use his chant. I listen. It's filled with names, not just star names or island names, but people, ancestors, teachers. The chant isn't just a navigation tool anymore. It's an archive, a family tree, a whispered thank you across centuries. We take turns steering, and every so often, someone offers a name aloud into the night like a breath on the wind. I hear Tava Papa Mau Nainoa Puleka Kele Kiala, names that don't belong to me, but somehow feel familiar. I try to say one too quietly. Maw. The name feels warm on my tongue, heavy. This whole voyage feels like a memorial now, not a sad one, more like a tribute, a ceremony held not in a temple, but on a canoe made of trees and sweat and memory. One elder says, "We are the last ones who remember the ones who remembered." That sentence doesn't leave me for hours. He explains that as modern tools took over GPS satellites, motorboats, the need for star navigation faded, and with it, the urgency to remember. Without voyages, there were no wayfinders. Without wayfinders, the chants went silent. Until people started asking again. Until they realized something was missing. That's when the revival began. That's why this canoe exists. That's why I'm here. I ask another question, unsure if it's rude. Did the old ones know we'd come back? A long pause. Then they hoped. I sit back, watch the stars. The compass is clear in my head now. The memory palace is lit up like a floating city, but none of it feels useful if it's only in my head. That's the second secret I've learned out here. It's not just about knowing. It's about giving it away before it disappears. We pass through another stretch of ocean. Someone offers another name. Then we keep sailing, not because we're lost, but because someone else needs to remember this path. The wind shifts, and with it something else, something more electric. The energy on the canoe has changed. It's not just about remembrance anymore. It's about movement. We're no longer honoring the past. We're re-entering it, reliving it. I find myself aboard a vessel that's no longer just a floating classroom. It's a time machine. And tonight, we're heading straight into a living piece of history, the revival voyages. We're tracing a path once followed by the Hokulea, the first Hawaiian voyaging canoe built in over 600 years, launched in 1975. You know, right around the same time, bell-bottoms were in style and lava lamps were considered acceptable home decor. But out here, that year meant something entirely different. It meant rebirth. Not of wood or sail, but of culture. The stars above us are the same stars the first Hokulea crew followed when they sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti without modern instruments, just like the old ones. They sailed thousands of miles using chants, swell memory birds, cloud shapes, and their own breath. Most people thought they wouldn't make it. Spoiler alert, they did. And that moment changed everything. Tonight, I'm sailing with a modern crew doing the same thing. Not because they have to, but because they choose to. That's what gets me. These are people with phones, Wi-Fi passwords, Spotify playlists, and yet they've left it all behind to follow a map made of stars and salt. One of the crew members explains, reviving the voyages isn't just about technique. It's about healing. I nod like I get it, but I don't, not yet. We make camp on a small island for the night, barely more than a strip of sand and a stubborn grove of palms. As we sit around a small fire, someone shares a story of their first voyage. I couldn't remember the chant. I panicked. Then I looked up, and the stars, they sang it for me. Sounds dramatic, but out here I believe it. One odd fact I learned during early revival voyages: crews trained by blindfolding themselves and navigating by sound alone. Water, slap wind, hiss the creak of wood under tension. You weren't just memorizing the ocean. You were becoming it. Historians still debate whether this cultural revival was purely symbolic or if it restored genuine ancient techniques. Critics say some of the knowledge was reconstructed with modern help. Defenders argue, so what? The point wasn't historical purity, it was cultural survival. And honestly, if singing your ancestors back into memory takes a little patchwork. I say, sing louder. The next morning, I'm given the tiller. Go on, they say. You've earned this. Which is ridiculous. I haven't earned anything except mild sunburn and a star name addiction. But I take it. Hands on wood, eyes forward. The canoe responds like a living thing. She's light, fast, listening. I steer, poorly. The crew adjusts for me without a word. They expect the mistakes. They absorb them like the sea absorbs raindrops. And something clicks. This revival isn't about perfection. It's about continuation. About choosing to remember, even if the memory is rusty shaky, rebuilt from splinters and echoes. I ask one of the younger navigators, what keeps him coming back? I like being small, he says. In a world that tells you to be big all the time, this makes me small again. But in a good way, and that's it. That's what I've been trying to feel. The stars above me aren't waiting for perfect knowledge. They're just waiting for someone to look up. Later, we sail past an old reef once used as a training route. I imagine the first revivalists, nervous, excited, maybe seasick, like me testing their skills under pressure. I imagine them getting it wrong, and then getting it less wrong the next day. I think of Mao watching from the stern, saying nothing, just waiting to see if they'd listen to the ocean. I hope they did. I think we are. And somewhere in that silence between stars and swells, I feel the chant stirring again. This time, I don't need to sing it. It's already singing me. It's a clear night again, almost too clear. The kind of sky that makes you feel like you've accidentally fallen upward into space, and the ocean is just hanging below you like a misplaced mirror. We've been sailing for hours, maybe days, tracing old paths with new hands. The stars are steady, the swell is calm, and someone says, let's talk about Einstein. Excuse me. Apparently, this is the part of the journey where ancient ocean math meets modern science, and my brain is already preparing to short circuit. The navigator laughs at my face. You thought wayfinding was just chanting and bird watching, I mean. Yeah, a little, but no. Turns out, Hawaiian navigation contains within it a kind of built-in physics. Maybe not formulas written on chalkboards, but the ideas are their relative position frame of reference movement through space and time. Just without the weird hair and the German accent, we start with the idea of relative motion. Remember Itak, that whole the islands move past you thing. That's basically Einstein's theory of relativity on a canoe. The observer is fixed. The world moves around them. Sound familiar? An odd fact. I learned some physicists studying traditional navigation methods noticed that Polynesian wayfinding deals in frames of reference the same way relativity does. In both cases, movement and direction are determined not by fixed points, but by relationships. You're not traveling west. You're letting the island come to you from the east. Think about that the next time you're stuck in traffic. It'll make you feel philosophical and probably late. Historians and scientists still debate whether this was deliberate physics or just poetic wisdom. But the deeper I go into this world, the more I realize those two things aren't so different out here. We talk about speed next. In modern terms, speed is distance over time. In ocean terms, it's how the swell feels against the hull. How long it takes for your chant to finish before the bird returns. Time isn't something you measure with a watch. It's something you sense, like heat, or hunger, or longing. One of the crew members tells me, we know when it's been an hour because our shadows change, or the light shifts, or we just feel it in our breath. That's either mystical nonsense or the most advanced temporal awareness I've ever heard. The more I think about it, the more I realize this kind of navigation might actually be more advanced than what we do today. We rely on screens. They rely on intuition, connection, constant feedback loops between body, sea, sky, and memory. There's no recalculating here. There's just recalibrating, I ask. So what happens if you're wrong? Someone shrugs. Then you're somewhere. And if you're somewhere, you're not lost. I kind of love that. Later that evening, we dive into a deeper conversation, how these knowledge systems were dismissed for centuries. How people thought if you didn't write it down, it wasn't real. If you couldn't measure it in Western units, it didn't count. But these navigators measured everything. They just did it with stories, with chants, with rhythm. I'm told about a navigator who could feel the weight of a storm coming 3 days in advance, not by looking at the sky, but by how the fish changed direction, how the waves felt slightly off, how his own dreams grew heavier. Science, maybe. Intuition, definitely. Magic. Sure feels like it. I lie back again, letting my brain swirl between Einstein and Etok, between relativity and reef fish. The stars overhead shimmer with all their usual smug wisdom. And I can't help but think we've been here before, long before satellites, long before telescopes, before Google Earth and Google Sky and Google, please tell me what I'm doing wrong. Humans were already crossing oceans, already mapping the galaxy in their skulls, already solving equations we haven't even named yet, and they were doing it barefoot. I don't know what that says about us, but I know what it says about them. It says we were always brilliant, always capable, always more than we were told. The ocean was never empty. It was full of math, full of memory, full of songs waiting to be sung again. We've been sailing for what feels like forever now. The stars have become so familiar, I can't remember a time I didn't know their names. My palms are rough from rope. My voice instinctively hums the star chant before sleep, and my internal compass, surprise, surprise, actually kind of works. I look out across the horizon and say it before anyone else does. Hoku'ula is rising. Someone grins. You saw it before we did. I don't say anything, but inside, I feel like I just passed the hardest test in the world. Tonight, as we near the end of this journey, the crew begins to sing something different. Not a chant, not a lesson. A mele, a Hawaiian song of remembrance and return. It's soft, melodic, and impossibly old. I can't understand all the words, but I don't need to. I understand the feeling this isn't just a destination. It's a homecoming, and with that, everything begins to make sense. The stars, the birds, the waves, the way we built imaginary islands to remember real ones, the way we made a compass out of light, the way silence could say more than any classroom ever could. I ask one last question. How do you know when you've arrived? The elder looks up, then back at me. You don't, he says. The island tells you, and right then I smell it. Land. It's not strong. It's subtle. A thread of sweetness in the wind. A hint of soil. Green. Something that doesn't belong to the sea. The clouds shift. A faint outline forms on the horizon. Not detailed, not crisp, just a shadow. But we all know what it is. Someone starts a low chant. The rest of the crew joins in and we raise the sail one final time, steering toward the island, not just with our hands, but with our whole history. Because this isn't just a place. It's proof. Proof that we could remember, that we did remember, that everything we thought was lost was waiting. And I think about all of it. Every chant, every attack point, every imaginary island, every uncomfortable coconut seat. And I realize something. I didn't learn how to navigate. I learned how to listen to the wind, to the ocean, to the people who never stopped whispering the way forward, even when no one was listening. And now I can hear them, their voices in the waves, Their maps in the stars, their hearts in the hull of this canoe. We step onto land at dawn. The sun rises behind us. The island in front of us breathes. We're home. The canoe is still now. The water, after all its stories, rests like silk under a waking sky. My body aches in places I didn't know could ache. My eyes sting from salt, from sleep, from wonder. But my mind is quiet. That good kind of quiet. The kind that doesn't need music or noise or validation. Just breath. Just memory. Just the echo of chance still lingering in the folds of the sail. I lie back on the sand, close my eyes, and let the island wrap itself around me. There's no rush anymore. No map to follow. No test to pass. The stars are still up there faint now, washed pale by the morning. But they're not leaving. They never do. They're just waiting for night to fall again, so they can begin the song once more. And if you listen closely, you might hear it too. The soft hum of history, the steady pulse of wayfinding, the lullaby of a world that always knew the way, even when we didn't. So rest easy now. You've made the crossing. You've walked through the memory palace. You've learned to let the sky move through you. You're not lost. You're just still. Still enough to remember. Still enough to feel. Still enough to finally let go. And as the wind stirs and the ocean breathes its slow, deep breath, you drift into that quiet place between thought and dream. That starless, shoreless, timeless place where wayfinders go to sleep